Alright everyone, welcome back to another Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes video with Fat Phil, and today we're continuing our series on Roster Building 101, and we are going to be talking about finishing your farms today. This is one of those phrases that I think gets thrown around a lot, and sometimes I think we lose what it really means, so we're going to be talking about how, and where, and when, and what it all means to finish a farm, and I think that this will help you understand how to more accurately navigate the game. It's Galaxy of Heroes right now, with the stagnation in content at the time of recording, is definitely at a place where finishing farms kind of comes up and, begins to get to the top of people's minds, and I want to make sure you go about that the right way. So please go ahead, like and subscribe, comment down below, guys. It helps this channel so much, and of course, no video would be complete without thanking our channel members for their continued support. If you're ever interested, y'all know where the link is. It's down below. We'll link to Discord. Go check it out. Thank you guys again for keeping the faith, for believing in me, and just being a part of the best community that Star Wars has to offer. I really appreciate you guys. Obviously, I'm very biased there, but I can't thank you enough for keeping the faith. You guys are great. Let's get in here. Let's talk about Roster Building 101. Alright, folks. So, in this episode, again, talking about finishing your farm. So we've got a couple of examples here we're going to work through. So first things first is, whenever you're thinking about finishing a farm, you have to ask the question of, what's the purpose, right? First thing you ever need to ask is, what is the purpose of finishing that farm? An example we'll use is myself with finishing the Saw Gerrera Rebel Fighters for the Kashyyyk Special Mission. In this mission, I need 5 Rebel Fighters, including Saw Gerrera, at Relic 7. So right now, my plan is to build Saw Gerrera, Luthen, Kyle, and then add them with Captain Rex and Captain Drogon. That's kind of the team I'm envisioning using for this mission. While Rex and Drogon can go with Leia Organa, I don't really need them to go with Leia Organa. I can put them here and use other characters with Leia, so I'm not too concerned. Finishing the farm will look like finishing these guys. Because you could say, well, Phil, what about Grand Arena? Well, I have, I'm not going to use Rex and Drogon for Grand Arena especially for 5v5, because that doesn't make sense. I want to put them with Leia or with the Phoenix. I've got other uses for them. So I have Lando, Wedge, and Biggs that can kind of fit that slot. And all of these characters are arguably better, not just for the mission, but even, definitely for GAC as well, and arguably for the mission, right? That's the way I wanted to say that. But I don't have the resources right now to go through and Relic Chirrut to Relic 7. Particularly when I've already invested resources into a character like Kyle and Rex and Drogon. It doesn't make sense, right? And the other side of that as well is, I'm quite okay with the way that they perform in GAC with Wedge and Biggs. I'm not looking for this to be a GL killer or for this to be the greatest team ever. The purpose I'm building it for is that Kashyyyk Special Mission. If I get to use it and get some holds in GAC, great. If not, I can't cry over, spilt moof milk. You know what I mean? It is what it is. So that's the number one question you need to ask is, what's the actual purpose of what you're building? And it could be specific, like the Saw Gerrera team here, right? That it's specifically for Kashyyyk. And in other cases, building GL Ahsoka. I mean, that's just a general purpose thing. In general, she's good, so I'm going to invest to make sure that she's generally good in every friggin' game mode. So, hopefully you guys understand what I mean when I say that, what's the purpose is, sometimes a character can have a very specific purpose, and other times it's more general, and that's okay. If it's more general, you're normally going to have a more gray area of how much to invest. When it's a more specific purpose, you're going to have a very kind of hard, fast stopping point, and just understanding what it takes to get there and not doing too much. And again, we'll keep, showing some examples and talking through that. The next thing is, what are your plans? So what are your plans for that team? So I have the, Afra team here, right? So when I bought the Dr. Afra Lightspeed bundle, I have BT1 and Trip 0, made some decisions about, Afra and BT1 relic levels for the Dathomir combat mission. So again, kind of, what's the purpose? And then I also have Darth Vader, HK, and IG-88 all at relic levels from various things. And those are good enough for me to do what I need to do in Grand Arena, right? I'm not using Afra to kill Jabba at the moment. Like, I feel good about where she is, right? This does what I need it to do. If I wanted to really be able to kill Jabba, I'd need to go gear up B2 Battle Droid because he's a very significant part of that. If you look at the success rates with Dr. Afra without B2 Battle Droid, it drops significantly against Jabba. So the question you're asking here is, what is your plans? If you're planning to use Afra to try and kill Jabba, then you need B2. If you're not going to do that, you don't really need B2 to be in that team. Like, that's not what you're asking her to do. Think about the same thing with the Luthen team. What are you asking them to do? If your plans are not to make this a GL beater or a world beater team, then it's okay to kind of stop with the good enough. And this is a very important thing to note, because with certain teams, I think we put them on a pedestal that maybe they don't belong to, or think that because Arnold or Zareth or Fat Phil is using them in a certain way, that means we should too. Recognize where you are in the game and what you can actually use them for, right? A good example, I don't want you building B2 Super Battle Droid for this Afra team if you never face Jabba, right? And you could use these guys to kill Jabba, but then if you don't have a good counter for Zori, and so you're going to end up using Supreme Leader Kylo Ren to kill a Zori team, like, what are we doing, right? And again, I'm not saying that that's not, that sometimes it's not worth a trade-off or whatever, but you get the concept that, like, what do you really need Afra to do? And that's a big part of understanding when to finish a farm, that if I need her to kill Jabba, I've got more work to do. If I don't, hey, good enough, we can move on, right? So, again, talking about, like, when to stop gearing, because you could sit there and say, oh, well, Phil, you could take, like, B2 to Relic 3, and that's fine, and, sure, but, like, how do you know where to stop that gear level? Well, this is where it gets complicated, right? Because you've got to ask yourself a couple of questions. And, that question that you ask again, well, what are your plans? What's the purpose? But also, what's your current goal? If your current goal is unlocking GL Ahsoka Tano, you don't really want to be spending resources on Enoch, Night Trooper, and Death Trooper if that's going to delay you getting your goal. Right? Because those Relic 9s, yes, it's super nice, right? You're going to get that extra little bit of the combat or the assault battle. But let's say you only got that twice. I mean, is it really worth getting that 2 extra times and delaying Ahsoka for a while you recuperate the signal data? Probably not, right? And the other way that you can think about, like, when to stop gear is, okay, sure, I can't use them in that assault battle at the Relic 9 tier. But hey, they work with the Great Mothers and with for the special mission, and they work with Dark Trooper, Moff Gideon, and Scout Trooper in the combat mission on Dathomir. So the only way I'm not really able to use them is in their assault battle at the Relic 9 tier. I still get to use them at the Relic 7 and below, I just don't get the Relic 9 benefit. But everywhere else, I'm getting a use out of them. So in this instance, where to stop that gear was Relic 7. That overall, I'm okay with stopping there while I continue on to my current goal of getting Ahsoka, and then eventually maybe go back and finish them to Relic 9 when I'm at a point in my roster's evolution where I can make that change and not delay a major part of my growth from happening. So this is I thought this was a really good example to show of, like, when to stop that gear, because sometimes it's pretty easy when it's a GL requirement like Ezra Bridger. Right? It's pretty easy to figure out when to stop gearing him. Relic 5, get done. Pretty easy to figure out where to stop gearing, Morgan, Shin, and Merrick. Like, okay, I need to get Balin. But what about after the fact? Well, that's where you've got to, again, start asking the questions of what's the purpose? What are your plans? And, kind of what's your current goal? Are you able to be using them for what you need? And let's say that you're like, hey, you know what? I've got a Relic 8 Gideon. I've got a Relic 8 Scout Trooper. My remnants are only Relic 7. Well, maybe I bump them up to Relic 8 and get extra combats out of them on Haven class or Mandalore. That's the kind of conversations you need to have there. Is just, how much of a value is that to your account? Is it stopping you from getting anything? If your current goal is right here and spending the Relic 9 is going to move it down or, delay it, maybe we don't. If it's not going to delay it, go ahead and finish it. That's the whole point of finishing your farms, is understanding, is it your current goal to get that team to Relic 9, or is it your current goal to get Ahsoka, right? All right, this next point, you guys need to follow me with this kind of analogy, saying, phrase, whatever. So, don't put a band-aid where you need stitches. And don't put stitches where a band-aid will do. So what does this mean, right? Let me show you kind of what I'm talking about here. So let's start with the Bo-Katan Kryze team up here. You're going to build these 3 characters because they're part of her requirements. So then you're left with OG Bo. You're left with Bo-Katan Mandalore, bring her to Relic 7, match everything up. So then there's 5 viable options for her 5th slot. There's 5 like legitimate light side Mandalorians that we can use to fill in the 5th slot for her. So you've got Padawan Sabine, and she's kind of an outlier because she still is a very good character. She can slot in there, but eventually she's going to go with the Spectre team. So that's a band-aid in the sense that this is not her eventual home. Her eventual home is with Ahsoka Tano. So when you go build Ahsoka, sure, you've already got Padawan Sabine, but now you've got to put in another character to this squad, right? That you kind of put a band-aid on it, not because she's not a good character, but this isn't her final place. Then you have Sabine Wren and Mando, who, of the 2 of them, Sabine Wren definitely has a bit more synergy there, but she's still, I would say, the weaker option here, right? She's a weaker option than 2 of the other, Sabine Wren, Padawan. And then, of course, in terms of Baby Bo and the armor, Sabine Wren OG is much worse than these 2. And so let's say you have Sabine Wren and Mando at Relics because of Lightspeed bundles. Yes, using them with Bo gets you a team of Mandos. But you kind of put a band-aid on that team. You're not getting the full benefit of what that team can do, and that could potentially hurt you in territory battles, territory wars, Grand Arena, because you don't have the full viability of the uniques of the armor and or Bo-Katan Kryze. So that's where, using somebody like this to fill in this team is putting a band-aid where you need stitches, right? That you need some heavier work done to really get this team where it needs to be. You don't want to just put a band-aid on it for now and then you end up infected because you can't beat what you need to do. You guys follow that? That like in some cases, just throwing it here because you've got it isn't the smartest decision. On the flip side, don't use stitches when a band-aid will do. And I think a perfect example of this is the whole Merrick situation with Grand Inquisitor. I made a whole video kind of talking about players asking, hey, should I build Merrick for the Grand Inquisitor event? And the answer is absolutely not. Because the prerequisites are these 5 Inquisitors. Merrick's name isn't on here. So that means you need to build a 6th character to whatever relic level to then use after you've already built the prerequisites. And the thing is, you don't need Merrick, right? Like, this has been done for generations without Merrick. So, you don't need it, right? You're putting stitches on something where a band-aid works, right? And the band-aid being, like, the original 5 Inquisitors. Like, with this event, yes, you can use, it's just, hey, Relic 5, Inquisitorius. That's the only requirements here. You can use Reva and Grand Inquisitor in this mission. Like, obviously, you won't have Grand Inquisitor, but like, I can use whatever Inquisitors I have at Relic 7, or at Relic 5, right? If you're a Relic 5 Inquisitor, you can get used in this mission regardless of, like Grand Inquisitor, I get to use him. You know what I mean? Like, it, obviously, you'd have to unlock him, but you guys get the concept there. That, like, same thing with Reva. You could use her in this event if you had her at Relic 5. Not that most people would have Reva before Grand Inquisitor, but you get the idea. So, no, you don't want to gear up Merrick for, like, Inquisitors, to get GI. And kind of, doubling down on that, same thing for the Reva mission. Does Merrick make it easier with the Omicron? Absolutely. But only if you're going to equip the Omicron. But you don't need to equip the Omicron, right? Like, that's applying stitches to a cut that a Band-Aid works on, right? You have no need for that Omicron. Is it awesome and really cool to use? Yes, but you don't need it, right? And for a lot of you, you're in that point in the game where an Omicron like Merrick, yes, makes life easy, but you might have more important needs than that. And again, same thing with the Haven class medical station special mission for Guild Event Currency 3. Merrick will make that easier. But for generations, and generations in quotes, we've completed that mission with the original Inquisitors. So don't go and equip, don't go build Merrick out of the blue because he's got that Inquisitor tag when a Band-Aid of the original ones work, right? Save those resources to be able to build everything else. That's going to be a really important thing for you to learn as you go through the game, right? That's a big, finishing farms kind of the other way that, like, don't go overboard. You got to be Goldilocks, right? Think of Goldilocks. Not too hard, not too far, not too short, just right. And then finally, mods before relics. When you're going through and trying to get the best characters possible, you're going for your Rey, Kylo, whatever. Before looking at them and saying, hey, I'm going to get them to Relic 8 or Relic 9, max out their mods. Where a lot of players get caught up is they pay attention to the little relic number here instead of actually popping them open and looking at this stuff. There are a lot of players who have a Relic 9 Supreme Leader Kylo Ren, a Relic 9 Rey, and their stats are like a Relic 8 or even 7 because their mods are not that good. If you're trying to finish a farm, start with the mods. Get that character operating like a Relic 8 if they're Relic 7 or whatever relic level they are. Get them operating at a level where they're acting like a Relic 8 character, acting like a Relic 9 character. And that way, when you do eventually go back and finish them, you're getting a significant boost because of the mods as well. Like my Kylo and Rey against most Relic 9s that I face are very competitive, if not still better stats than my opponents. I bring them to Relic 9, that's even worse, right? So I'm finishing my farms in the sense of getting the mods. Because remember, stats are more important than relic levels. Like, in the sense of, if you can get the same stats as somebody without spending the relics, you're doing good. Now, obviously, relics play a role in TB, but if you're talking PvP, would you rather have a Relic 9 Rey or a Relic 7 Rey or Relic 8 Rey with more health and offense because you've got better mods on it? Like, I'll take the stats, right? Again, that's just, maybe I'm different, but that's the way I am. And especially thinking about events, I know a lot of players who will try an event, they fail, and immediately are like, do I need to increase my relic levels? Before you go and increase relic levels, maybe check your strategy, but remod. Like, overmod for an event. Like, the first time I did the clone special mission, oh my gosh. I was putting, like, let me make sure, let me go back to this, because I still have the clones. Like, look at the mods I was putting on 5s. I'm literally putting Rey and R2-D2's mods on 5s just to make just complete absurdity to make sure that I'm completing that mission, right? Another prime example is the Rebel Officer Leia Organa Han Solo, the tier 2 of the Leia event, which, shout out, I forget who in my server showed me that. They did it without the Zetas, because you don't drop tickets anymore, so they did it without Zetas, but they just completely over-modded. So when you're in those situations, I want to say that was Legolas who did that. That the big thing here is recognizing that situation where remodding for this event, rather than him failing and sitting there and being like, I need to go Relic 7 these characters, let me overmod, right? So if I can encourage you guys when you're thinking about finishing farms, make sure that you go with the mods before adding relic levels, because those relic levels can be important down the road when you're trying to go for that next galactic legend. And how much better is it to have a couple relic 8s in your pocket because you spent time tweaking Kylo and Rey and Starkiller's mods, rather than trying to start that next GL with nothing in your pocket because you were, trying to rush through and get good stats without touching mods, right? And again, that works the same way with events. Why spend Relic 8s on clones when Relic 7s with good mods get the job done, right? So guys, that's kind of the roster building 101 on how to finish your farms. Like, what's your purpose? Like, don't go above and beyond. What does a finished farm look like? Well, if your purpose is just to complete a specific thing, then get there and be done. What is your plan for that? If your plan is to use them to be a world beater, then that's another question to ask. Is it in the way of your current goal? If it's in the way of your current goal, maybe we hold back and say, hey, gotta get there first, and then I'll circle back around. Like, it's okay to not finish your farm if it's going to stop you from your current goal, because your current goal is what you're trying to finish. Like, remember, Game is a marathon, not a sprint. And then, don't use a Band-Aid when you need stitches, and don't use stitches when a Band-Aid will suffice. Don't go and, over-create a team to finish it, and also don't, under-create a team that you're not really getting the full benefit of that character. Because that's a big deal. When you're trying to, I see a lot of players who will fail against a team, and you look, and either oh, well, my Jedi Master Kenobi team doesn't have Padme, so they got wrecked by, some team attacking out of turn or whatever. And then finally, mods before relics. I preach this from the top of the hill, but when you're trying to finish a farm, modding is going to be more important than the relics. From the standpoint that trying to throw all these relics on characters is great, but if you still have to equip those for other farms, you're going to want them comparative to the mods. So, again, let me know your guys' thoughts. I hope this video series is helpful to you. Let me know what you want to hear me talk about next. I love you all. May the Force be with you. And if you're still watching right now, go ahead and mods over relics in the comments. I love you guys. May the Force be with you. And I'll see you in the next one. Cheers, my friends.